The apartment felt different with one toothbrush missing. Her hotel room key sat on the granite countertop like evidence she forgot to hide. I'm Richard Hale, 48, and I make my living finding holes in other people's systems. Corporate cybersecurity consulting. Most of my clients never see the threats coming until I show them the receipts. Laura said she was flying to Miami for a wellness retreat. Yoga, digital detox, group therapy sessions, the whole package for damaged souls seeking inner peace. But her suitcase told a different story. I watched her pack through the bedroom doorway. Bikinis instead of yoga pants. Designer sundresses where meditation robes should be. Not one piece of athleisure in sight. She kissed my cheek at the door. I'll call you when I can. You know how these retreats are about disconnecting. I nodded, smiled, waited for her Uber to disappear around the corner. Then I opened our shared iCloud account. Most people forget photos carry metadata, location stamps, time codes, device signatures. Laura was meticulous about most things, but technology wasn't her strong suit. She'd uploaded 3 photos before remembering to turn off location services. A Miami Beach hotel, a restaurant in South Beach, a marina I didn't recognize. I downloaded everything, quietly. 3 days into her retreat, my phone buzzed. Text from Jake Morrison, former coworker who'd moved to Atlanta last year. He was in Miami for a compliance conference. Isn't this your wife? The photo made my coffee go cold. Laura on a yacht deck, arm wrapped around a man I'd never seen. She was laughing at something he'd whispered in her ear. He wore expensive sunglasses and a smile that belonged in cryptocurrency promotional videos. I knew that smile. I'd seen it in security briefings about digital asset fraud schemes. His name was Derek Wolfe. I'd read about him in industry reports. The kind of guy who promises blockchain revolution but delivers empty wallets. I stared at the photo for exactly 30 seconds. Then I forwarded it to myself and deleted Jake's message thread. Laura wasn't at a wellness retreat. She was playing a different game entirely. But here's the thing about games. They have rules. And I built a career understanding systems that other people think are invisible. I opened my laptop and started typing. 5 words, nothing more. Nice retreat. Check your wallet. Send. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel betrayed. I felt something colder than both. The game had just begun and she didn't even know she was playing yet. You know what they say about cybersecurity? The best defense starts with knowing exactly what you're protecting. Laura thought she was the only one with access to our digital life. She was about to learn how wrong she was. I poured another cup of coffee and opened our financial dashboard. Time to see what other systems she thought I couldn't monitor. The apartment stayed quiet. But now it felt different, for all the right reasons. She never replied to the email. That told me everything. Radio silence for 72 hours. Not even a question mark or angry emoji. When someone doesn't respond to a direct threat, they're either planning something bigger or they're already 3 steps ahead. I started with the documents. 3 months ago, Laura had convinced me to sign a revocable trust. Just in case anything ever happened to us, she'd said over morning coffee. Smart financial planning for a couple in their 40s. I pulled the paperwork from our home office filing cabinet. Page 12, buried in legal language that most people skip. A clause I'd signed without reading twice. If I became inactive for more than 90 days, access authority transferred to her. Inactive, not dead. Inactive. What kind of wellness retreat teaches you about estate planning loopholes? I opened our shared password manager and started checking access logs. Every account, every platform, every digital fingerprint we'd built together over 8 years of marriage. She'd been busy. Our crypto cold wallet credentials had been rerouted to a Gmail account I'd never seen. The email address looked familiar, though. Same structure as the ones Derek Wolfe used in his investor communications. Time to call in professional help. Nathan Brooks answered on the second ring. We'd worked together at a consulting firm 5 years ago, before he switched to forensic accounting. The kind of guy who finds money trails that other people think they've erased. Richard? Hale, it's been forever. What's up? I need a favor. Off the books. Can you trace some crypto movements? 30 minutes later, he was at my kitchen table with a laptop and 2 cups of black coffee. Show me what you've got. I walked him through the timeline, the trust documents, the rerouted wallet access, the Miami photos I'd saved to a secure folder. Nathan's fingers moved across his keyboard like he was playing piano. Numbers, addresses, transaction logs, the digital breadcrumbs Laura thought she'd covered. Here's your problem, he said after 20 minutes. $278,000 moved. Most of it came from your long-term investment account. The number hit me like cold water. That's not possible. I would have gotten alert. Shell transfer, initiated from your tablet while you were logged in. Clean, professional work. Someone knew exactly what they were doing. I remembered Laura borrowing my tablet last month. Said her phone was dead and she needed to check something for work. I'd handed it over without thinking twice. How long had she been planning this? Nathan pulled up another screen. Transaction history going back 6 months. Small movements at first, then larger ones. Always just under the threshold that would trigger automatic compliance. Reviews. Richard, look at this pattern. This isn't impulse behavior. This is systematic asset extraction. He turned the laptop toward me. The screen showed a timeline of transfers, each one precisely calculated to avoid detection systems I'd helped design for other clients. She wasn't planning to run away, Nathan said quietly. She was planning to replace you. The words hung in the air like smoke. Replace me, not leave me, replace me. This wasn't about Derek Wolfe being better than me or more exciting. This was about creating a new financial identity while keeping the old one intact. She'd have access to everything we'd built, and I'd be the inactive partner who signed away his own security. How much time do I have? I asked. Hard to say. But if I were you, I'd cut off access tonight. These systems have a way of accelerating once they reach critical mass. I nodded, started closing files and clearing browser history. Nathan, I need you to document everything we found. Timestamps, transaction logs, the whole chain. Can you do that without it coming back to either of us? Consider it done. But Richard, whatever you're planning, be careful. People who think this systematically don't usually stop at money. After he left, I sat in my home office, staring at the crypto wallet interface. 2-factor authentication seed phrase reset. 1 click would isolate all remaining assets under my control alone. I wasn't stealing. I was reclaiming what was already mine. The cursor hovered over the reset button. Laura had turned our marriage into a business transaction. She'd used my trust, my tablet, my signature to build an exit strategy that would leave me with nothing but legal documents I'd signed in good faith. But here's what she'd forgotten about cybersecurity professionals. We don't just find vulnerabilities in other people's systems. We know how to close them. I clicked reset. The system processed for 30 seconds, then displayed a confirmation message. Assets secured. Access restricted to primary account holder only. I leaned back in my chair and checked the time, 11:47 p.m. Laura's retreat was supposed to end tomorrow, but she wasn't coming home to the same financial landscape she'd left behind. The game was about to get much more interesting. Crypto always promises freedom. It rarely mentions receipts. Derek Wolfe's fund had been operating for 18 months without proper registration. I found that out with 3 phone calls to compliance contacts who owed me favors from previous consulting projects. The beauty of working in cybersecurity, you build a network of people who specialize in finding what's hidden. I started building the chain of evidence methodically. Shared wallet addresses, transaction timestamps, shell LLCs created under Laura's maiden name that I'd never heard her mention. Each piece connected to the next like a blueprint someone thought they'd torn up. My contract tracing tools revealed something interesting about Derek's background. His real name was Derek Wolfson, and he was connected to a wire fraud case still pending in Atlanta, federal court, still under seal. But sealed cases leave digital footprints if you know where to look. I didn't leak the information to authorities. That would be too direct, too obvious. Instead, I sent an anonymous email to the mid-level venture capital group in Austin that had been Derek's primary investor. Just a simple message. Derek Wolfson, Atlanta wire fraud, case pending. Thought you should know. 18 hours later, their legal team was making calls. 48 hours after that, Derek's funding disappeared. But that's when I discovered something that changed everything. Laura hadn't just fallen for Derek Wolf. She'd been actively helping him. I found the emails buried in her work account backup. She'd been using her access to my consulting clients, pitching them on Derek's investment opportunities. Names, contact information, financial profiles she gathered from conversations at company dinners and client events. She wasn't Derek's victim. She was his business partner. The woman who'd convinced me to sign trust documents and shared our financial access had been recruiting my own clients into a fraud scheme. How's that for a wellness retreat revelation? I pulled up her LinkedIn activity from the past 6 months. New connections in cryptocurrency circles, posts about revolutionary investment opportunities, and breaking free from traditional financial constraints. She'd built an entire professional identity I'd never seen. But here's what really got my attention. An internal email thread from Derek's operation, where Laura was listed as an advisor on potential client outreach. Her name, her photo, her biographical information. They'd been using her credibility as Richard Hale's wife to legitimize their pitch to people who knew my reputation in cybersecurity. My marriage had become their marketing material. I stared at that email for a long time, not because I was angry, because I finally understood the complete picture. Laura hadn't been seduced by Derek Wolf. She'd been recruited. And she'd said yes to turning our life into a business asset. The venture capital group's legal team needed to see that email. I sent it without context, no explanation, no cover letter. Just a single PDF attachment showing Laura's advisor role in Derek's operation. Subject line: additional compliance concern. The email was opened at 9:23 a.m. on a Tuesday. By Thursday, Derek Wolf's social media accounts were deactivated. By Friday, the Austin VC Group had filed formal fraud disclosure paperwork with the SEC. You know what the interesting thing about House of Cards schemes is? They don't collapse slowly. They implode all at once, taking everything nearby with them. I didn't destroy Laura directly. I just erased the fantasy she'd bought into. Derek promised her financial freedom through cryptocurrency revolution. I showed his investors that the revolution was built on wire fraud and unregistered securities. Laura thought she could use my professional network as her personal client list. I showed Derek's backers exactly what kind of advisor they'd been working with. The beautiful thing about evidence is that it doesn't require interpretation. It just exists, waiting for the right audience to understand its implications. I spent the next week monitoring compliance networks and industry newsletters. Derek Wolf's fund was under investigation. Laura's advisor role was documented in federal disclosure filings. Their shared wallet system was frozen pending regulatory review. The fantasy they'd built together, the yacht lifestyle, the crypto freedom, the financial independence, had become a liability that would follow them through every background check for the next decade. I didn't need to confront either of them. The system was handling that conversation for me. Nathan sent me a text that Friday evening. Saw the news about Wolf's fund. Impressive work. I replied with a single word: thorough. Because that's what this was about. Not revenge, not anger, just thorough documentation of what people thought they could hide. Laura had wanted to replace me in our financial narrative. Instead, she'd written herself into someone else's federal investigation. Sometimes the best cybersecurity is just making sure the right people see the right information at the right time. Derek Wolf had promised her freedom. I'd given her exactly what she'd actually earned. The game was nearly over. But the final move wasn't mine to make. That would come when reality finally caught up with the story she'd been telling herself. A lawyer in Austin made a phone call at 2:15 p.m. on a Tuesday. 30 minutes later, Laura's LinkedIn profile disappeared. The venture group had filed their formal fraud disclosure that morning. Derek Wolfe vanished from all social media platforms by evening. When your funding gets pulled and regulatory flags start flying, smart money moves fast. Dumb money gets left behind. Laura's involvement surfaced in VC circles within 72 hours. Professional networks talk, especially when compliance teams start sharing internal memos about potential fraud exposure. She was named in 2 separate documents now circulating quietly among investment firms, not as a victim, as an advisor who'd help facilitate client recruitment. Her bank accounts froze on Thursday, not because of anything I did, because institutions panic when they see names associated with SEC investigations. Financial freedom has a way of disappearing when your name appears in regulatory paperwork. I watched it all happen from my home office, monitoring the same compliance networks I'd used to build my career. The professional community that had trusted Richard Hale's reputation was now distancing themselves from anyone connected to Derek Wolfe's collapsed scheme. Laura tried to reach me once. A voicemail left at 11:30 p.m. on a Friday. "Richard, I know you're not answering your phone. I just want to explain what really happened. This isn't what it looks like. Call me back when you get this." Her voice was calm, professional, the same tone she'd used to convince me to sign the trust documents. I deleted the message without calling back. What was there to explain? I'd already seen the email evidence, the advisor listing, the client recruitment strategy, the systematic financial extraction that had been planned months in advance. Some conversations don't need to happen. 6 weeks later, my phone rang at 3:47 a.m. "Richard!" Her voice sounded different now, broken, raw, like she'd been crying for hours. "He took everything. Derek took what was left and ran. I'm sitting in a motel parking lot outside Fort Lauderdale with $200 and a rental car I can't afford." I listened, didn't speak. The fund was fake, the investors were fake, the whole thing was just Derek, moving money between accounts and making it look legitimate. I thought we were building something real. The silence stretched between us. "Why would you do this to me, Richard? I know you sent that email to the Austin group. I know you're the reason everything collapsed." For a moment, I considered explaining. The trust documents, the shell transfers, the fact that she'd tried to erase me from our own financial life while using my professional reputation to legitimize a fraud scheme. Instead, I hung up. Some questions answer themselves. The collapse continued without my involvement. Laura's professional name was blacklisted in every industry database that mattered. Her accounts were under IRS review. She applied for jobs in Charlotte, Atlanta, Miami. None responded. When your LinkedIn disappears and your name shows up in compliance memos, employment opportunities tend to dry up fast. Nathan sent me a text that Friday. "The fund's on the SEC watch list now. Quiet flag. Nice work." I replied, "Just documentation." Because that's all it had been. I hadn't destroyed anything. I just made sure the right information reached the right people at the right time. The beautiful thing about systematic fraud is that it creates its own evidence trail. All I did was make sure that trail got followed to its logical conclusion. A week later, I saw a news report that made me pause. Laura's rental car had been found abandoned 2 blocks from the same Miami beach where she'd posed with Derek on that yacht. The metaphor was perfect. She'd had the ocean, the yacht, the promise of endless financial horizons. Now she had a parking lot and silence. The beach that had represented freedom became the place where her new reality finally caught up with her old fantasies. I turned off the news and went back to work. A new client needed help securing their digital assets against internal threats, the kind of systematic vulnerabilities that most people never see coming. It's funny how some skills translate across different situations. Laura had wanted to replace me in our financial narrative. Instead, she'd written herself out of every narrative that mattered. The game was over, but I hadn't won it. The system had. The same regulatory networks and compliance protocols that protect legitimate investors from fraud had simply done their job. I just made sure they had all the information they needed to do it properly. Sometimes the most devastating revenge is just letting reality catch up with the lies people tell themselves. Laura learned that lesson in a motel parking lot at 3:47 a.m. I learned it sitting in my home office, watching professional consequences play out exactly the way they're designed to. The toothbrush never returned. I replaced the countertop too. 3 months after Laura's parking lot phone call, I moved to a new apartment. Smaller place. 22nd floor of a glass tower in uptown Charlotte. No suburban memories. No shared spaces that still echoed with conversations about trust documents and wellness retreats. The new place had clean lines and cold light, no photos on the walls, no wedding albums in storage closets, just functional furniture and empty surfaces that didn't hold the weight of 8 years' worth of accumulated lies. I kept one envelope in my desk drawer. 6 weeks earlier, while Laura's professional life was imploding in BC compliance memos, I'd printed out the yacht photo Jake had sent me. The image of her arm wrapped around Derek Wolfe, both of them smiling like they'd discovered some secret the rest of the world was too stupid to understand. I'd sealed it in an envelope without looking at it twice. Now I opened it. Same photo. Same yacht, same confident expressions from two people who thought they'd outsmarted the system that put food on their table. I carried it to the kitchen sink and lit one corner with a match. The flame caught fast. The paper curled and blackened, releasing thin smoke that didn't smell like anything at all. Just carbon returning to air. Derek and Laura's perfect moment reduced to ash in 30 seconds. Then I walked to my home office and opened a new crypto wallet. Clean slate, fresh start. No shared access, no joint accounts, no trust documents with buried clauses. I labeled it with just 2 letters, R.H. Richard Hale. No backup passwords saved to shared drives, no recovery phrases stored in cloud accounts that someone else might access during a wellness retreat. Just memory. Just what belonged to me and no one else. The setup process asked if I wanted to add additional authorized users. I clicked no and closed the laptop. Outside my window, Charlotte's business district hummed with its usual rhythm. Glass towers full of people managing contracts, compliance requirements, investment portfolios. The same professional ecosystem that had quietly ejected Laura from its networks when her name appeared in the wrong regulatory documents. I stepped onto my small balcony and looked down at the evening traffic. The city didn't know what had happened in my marriage. It didn't need to. The system had processed Laura's choices according to its own logic, delivering consequences that fit the crimes without requiring public drama or personal confrontation. She'd wanted financial freedom through cryptocurrency revolution. She'd gotten exactly what she'd earned, and wanted to protect what we'd built together. I'd learned to protect what belonged to me alone. The apartment behind me was quiet in a different way than the old house had been. Not the silence of something missing, but the silence of something complete. No shared toothbrushes, no hotel room keys left on granite countertops, no metadata trails to follow or compliance networks to monitor. Just clean space and cold light, and the sound of a city that keeps moving regardless of who stays and who disappears. I went back inside and made coffee. Tomorrow I had a new client consultation, a tech startup worried about internal security vulnerabilities. The kind of systematic weaknesses that most people never see coming until someone shows them the receipts. It's what I do. It's what I'm good at. And now it's all I need to be good at. The game was over. The apartment was quiet. And for the first time in months, that felt exactly right.